So I don't have a script or notes or anything for this video, so I'm basically just winging it and pulling out whatever comes out top of my head. So that being said, forgive the less than eloquent presentation, right? Today I wanted to take a look at what exactly the spinning wheel is in Reverse 1999, because as we know, it is known to canonically exist within the world. Like, it is something that the people can interact with. It's not just like a game element or some justification for pulling stuff. It actually is something like a physical object that is present in Burton's suitcase. And I just wanted to go over how it potentially works and some ideas about what it might be or how it operates. So with that said, I'm probably gonna order these in order from least to most likely, just based on the information that we're sort of given. But yeah, let's go ahead and get to it, right? So theory number one is that it doesn't work, right? Theory number one is that Verton is just hallucinating all of this as she approaches the wheel to like pull someone out of the lake. Now, when we first encounter the wheel, right, we basically hear that Regulus is speaking outside, we hear her crying a little bit, and then we go out to investigate and we find that she's actually fallen asleep by this lake with the spinning wheel at the center of it. And after that we pull Sonetto out of the lake and she talks to us for a bit and then she falls asleep as well, which makes me believe that this whole phenomenon has some sort of, like effect on your mental state, or something like that. Now, in the story, Burton says that it doesn't affect her, but that's from her point of view, right? There's no guarantee that she isn't actually hallucinating all of this as we speak. Like, the moment she tries to pull someone out, she's just making things up in her own mind. And this is the least feasible theory. I'll say it right now. People interact with the things that she summoned. They recognize them as real physical objects that exist in real life. So clearly that's not the case. I just wanted to throw that out there just because I thought the whole putting everyone to sleep thing was kind of an interesting detail. I don't think it actually ever resolved into anything in the end. It just was something that sort of happened. But I did want to get it out there. So that's theory number one. So let's continue on to theory number two. Theory number two is that the spinning wheel is actually some form of matter replicator, right? Whenever we pull someone out of it, it makes a perfect copy of them based on, I don't know, maybe Burton's memories or from all of this time, like the record of their lives within like this time stream, right? Which means potentially there are two Sonettos running around because we did pull Sonetto out of there. That being said, I feel like this one is also kind of a dud just because people might have probably recognized that there were two of the same person running around in the real world, right? Which we haven't gotten any indication of yet. That being said, there's no direct evidence against it, so I would say it's a little higher up there than just the Burton hallucinating theory, but not by much. Like, we don't have any reason to believe this is the case, but I'll say it's a possibility. I'll say it's not a very likely possibility. But beyond that, we got nothing else for this. So moving on to part three. Now, theory number three is where we start to get to the things that could actually be maybe, actually feasible, like they could actually be the case. Now, theory number three is that when Burton pulls, it just kind of yoinks the person out of whatever they were doing and, deliver them to her. It's a teleporter device, basically, is what I'm trying to get at. Which, I mean, it's kind of funny to think about, right? Like, if you're driving and you get kind of summoned and just pulled out of your car, and now your car's going down the freeway at like 95 miles an hour, then, I mean, that's always a good time, right? That said, I think it's kind of a basic theory. I think it's a little boring, which is why I don't like it too much, but realistically speaking, I do think this is probably one of the most likely one-ish. Like, there's still... Okay, so between this one and the theory number 4, which is going to be the last one, I do think they're kind of on even footing here. If I had to take a pick between the two, just from everything we've been given, I do think this one kind of ekes it out ahead a little, but it's in spot number 3 just because I think theory number 4 is a lot more interesting, and I want to finish with that. So yeah, theory number 3 is that the wheel is just a teleporter that pulls whoever she's summoning from whatever they're doing and dropping them off in the suitcase. But with that, let's go ahead and move on to theory number 4. So, full disclosure, the whole reason I made this video and everything leading up to this was it's a build-up, because theory number 4 is the one that I find to be the most interesting one, as I've said. Now, I didn't really mention the logistics of everything beforehand, but in the story, chapter 2, I believe, early chapter 2 is when we actually see the spinning wheel for the first time up close. What we are told is that the lake that the spinning wheel resides in, and potentially all of the waters in the wilderness, but specifically that lake is singled out, states that the water that has pooled there is actually seepage from the storm. It is rainwater that has leaked into the wilderness. Now, when we go to examine this water, we find that it's not actually like water. It's not wet, it's not humid, or it flows like time is what I believe the wording they used. Which means the water in this lake is basically a pool of this unraveled time that has been sucked up by the storm and deposited here in the suitcase, in the wilderness. Which leads me to, theory number 4, which is that the spinning wheel is actually some kind of resurrection device. Now, resurrection device, I think, is maybe a little bit inaccurate, because technically you don't actually die when you get reversed, right? You just cease to exist because the time that you had existed in has been undone. But if this seepage from the storm is that time, then it's not necessarily disappeared, it's just all jumbled up in this, say, lake of, scrambled up time. So let's think about this for a moment, yeah? You have this lake that is just filled to the brim with what is essentially this unwound time. It is time that has been unraveled and jumbled up together and, mixed together, thrown into the air before falling back down as rain and seeping into our little abode. Right? That is the gist of it. And in this, resting in the dead center of this pool of accumulated time is a spinning wheel. Now, I think it's not unreasonable to say that the spinning wheel is, rather than, forming matter out of nothing and making a perfect replica of someone, or reaching across space and time to pull someone from whatever they're doing and deposit them into the suitcase, don't you think it would be maybe a little more reasonable to have a spinning wheel do what a spinning wheel is intended to do, right? Which is to take all of these disparate threads, all of these strands that have been mixed up and are tangled and kind of unruly, and weave them into something that is recognizable. A single clean thread that is not at all disorderly. And in this case, what that would result in for us is a person whose time has been, after it has been undone by the storm, is now being rewound by the spinning wheel. So in doing so, it pulls out an arcanist. I think that suits the theme of a spinning wheel a lot more than, teleportation or matter creation or hallucinations, right? Now, I don't say this entirely unfounded. There is some grounding for what I'm coming up with, right? Now, while I don't have notes for this, I do actually have the game on me, right? And as it turns out, certain items, I mean, not certain, most of the items in the game have some sort of like little description, some flavor text on them. And I wanted to read out 3 of them in particular. So the first one is going to be the description for the crystal drops. Now, the crystal drops are the purple currency, the one that you buy with like actual money, right? So it says, the storm arrived, and the raindrops rose into the sky as though returning to their mother's embrace, and the blistering hot cauldron from which they came. But accidents might happen. If they fail to reach the other side before the storm ends, they will fall back to the earth. That's the crystal drop. The next one is the clear drop. The clear drop is, I'm sure most people would know what that is. It's the orange ones that you used to buy Unilogs. The quiet twin, the most reliable of the siblings, and the one always giving help to those in need. It is armed with every virtue. It is the last raindrop to rise and the first to return to the earth. So, both of these items, the ones that we use as the currency in this game to pull for Arcanists, essentially, or at least to purchase the materials that we need to pull for Arcanists, is remnants of the storm. They are pieces of the storm that, as it says, never made it to the other side, whatever that means. So again, we're getting this idea of taking what belongs to the storm, all this stuff that was sucked up into the storm, and repurposing it and putting it all together. And in the end, what we come out with is people, right? People who potentially had stopped existing before that point, or after that point. Time travel is weird. So there's one more item after those 2 that I wanted to take a look at, and that's actually the Unilogs, which I'm sure everyone knows what the Unilogs are, I would hope, right? So the description for this one reads, the golden rabbit is a well-known myth. It spies on people, steals their time, and sometimes even changes their fates. Though it's old, decrepit, and stale, it is unique and indispensable. Now, there are some things that I wanted to take note of this, for example, to begin with, right? So, first of all, the design of this item, the rabbit, is like this clear, oops, did I move my camera? Sorry. Is this like clear rabbit shape that in the middle has, again, this thread. Like I've been talking about, is this thread that seemingly has been formed from orange drops. Because I mean that's what this rabbit looks like it's made out of, right? It looks like we crafted it out of these orange drops. So again, we're getting this idea of, time being condensed into a thread. And on their own, the threads are disparate. They are disorderly, chaotic, and don't really make a lot of sense to us. Like, they don't resemble anything that we would recognize. However, you feed these threads, you accumulate enough of them, and you feed them into the spinning wheel. Like in real life, you feed thread into a spinning wheel, and what comes out is like a thick cord or a braid or a rope. I think that's how spinning wheels work. In this case, you feed it all of this time that's been jumbled together, and what it comes out with is just one nice, clean, recognizable strand, right? In our case, it's an Arcanist. We recognize it as an Arcanist. Now, I think that's a fairly reasonable interpretation. However, there are, I believe, 2 discrepancies that do need some explaining, but I feel like they're fairly easy to explain. So we'll go ahead and take a look at those. So the first discrepancy, and probably the most glaring one, is that our people aren't dead, right? We got Regulus, we got Druvis, we got Sotheby. Like, all of those people are alive. We saved them. They're fine, but they're also all pullable in the summoning circle, the spinning wheel, right? So I don't really like to use the gameplay versus lore argument just because it's really convenient, it's too easy, it's a little lazy, right? But I do feel, just from a complete logistics standpoint, that is, if there was a place to use that argument, it would be here, right? Because it doesn't make a ton of sense to have multiple pulls, you know, based on how you actually encountered these characters. Like it's just overly complex. There's no reason to do it. And on top of that, if you did have different pools but didn't pull these lore accurate characters, well then that in itself would be a, you know, contradiction of the lore. So what? You're just gonna give them for free? You're gonna give us a Druvis and a Sotheby for free? I don't think so. A Regulus are free? Damn. I wish. But yeah. Like there's only so far you can get when you're designing a game where you can adhere to like the game as the lore states it, right? You gotta make compromises somewhere, and I think summoning in this case is probably one of those. You know, you want to make it as easy for people to summon because hey, that's when they spend money. No need for all this extraneous stuff. I know, it's not a very satisfying answer. I don't like it either, but it does make sense to me, so that's the one I'm sticking with. But yeah, moving on to number 2. The second issue with this theory is that we canonically have actually pulled a single Arcanist, and that is Sonetto. And that is also why I say that this is also the Sonetto is dead theory, or was dead theory. I need to stop using the word dead, they don't actually die. But yeah, so the thing about Sonetto, right? In the 1960 storm, she asks us, you know, how long until the storm is going to hit, and we tell her 10 minutes, right? The thing about that is that the last we ever see of her is that she is sprinting for dear life to head back to HQ, where things are safe, right? We do not hear from her after that up until we pull from her. There is a non-zero possibility that she just didn't make it. You know, she could have been trying to get there, she might have been held up, she might have, I don't know, gotten hurt or something. In any case, there's a good chance, I wouldn't say a good chance, there is a chance that she just never made it back to the Foundation, right? And was swept away by the storm, and she just happened to be the first person we pulled. Whether it's because of like recency or just as pure coincidence, that's what happened. Now there are a couple issues with this as well. The first of all being, we have those teleport floppies, right? But the thing is, why wouldn't she just use that immediately? Why would she sprint and run and not just, you know, pop out of existence and head back immediately if she was in such a hurry? But the second one is that when we pull her, we have a little bit of a dialogue, right? Before she falls asleep because of the lake. We have a little bit of a conversation where she mentions that she's actually spoken to Madame Z, and Madame Z tells her that Regulus was with us, which that kind of gives us a good date of when this conversation was had. It had happened sometime after she met Regulus and after she departed from us, right? But before she was pulled. Which means she must have, you know, come into contact with Miss Z at some point. However, we do know that the Arcanists and the Foundation in general have ways to communicate across distance. You know, you don't actually have to be in front of the person to talk to them. So it's possible that when she says she was talking to Madame Z, she literally meant she was talking to her, not that she had met her. Which means that there's no guarantee, like even with that little detail that they threw in, there is no guarantee that she ever actually made it back alive, or at all, for that matter. And I mean, that one is a little bit more on the fence, I think, because like I said, we don't exactly have confirmation one way or another. The implication is there that she did, but it's nothing concrete. And compared to like all the other like thematic elements and all the like little lore tidbits we get through items and stuff, it makes me think there's a bit more credence to the whole spinning wheel, you know, weaving people back into existence theory than there is refuting it. So, I mean, I do kind of like this theory, just because it kind of leaves things a bit more open-ended for us, you know? It doesn't really lock us out of receiving characters from a certain time period just because that time period is now done and over with, you know? Which, I mean, I just think that's good in general. Give yourself more options. That being said, I've been saying Arcanist this entire time when I'm referring to this. I don't think it necessarily needs to be Arcanist, right? Like, if you're to look in the Atlas, there are 4 distinct sections, and those 4 sections are Arcanists, obviously, but there's also Awakened, Mixed, and then the last one I believe is either Corrupted or Infected, one of the two. I can't recall correctly. Which means this wheel is capable of pulling up things that aren't distinctly classified as, you know, Arcanists. Which means, you know, we could pull other stuff up. And since these are all, you know, people who were melted, you know, reversed by the storm, that could mean that certain characters who maybe don't exist anymore might be able to make it back into the game. You know, you never know. It's possible. I'm talking about Carson. It's Carson. I want Carson back. Give me Carson.
Hello, Carson.
But yeah, that was the fourth theory. I think it's, I actually think it's quite solid. I think there's a lot going for it, but I mean, we'll have to hope that one day the game actually explains this stuff to us, because I doubt they will. I doubt they're going to go too in-depth into the logic of how the wheel works, just because it's such a, you know, I wouldn't say obscure because we visit it very often, but it's such a fundamental part of the game. It's just something people tend to take for granted that I just think they'll think that there's no real reason to go into it. Which is why I'm so confident saying this, because I know they'll never refute me, so let's go. Yeah, that's pretty much it for the video, though. I kind of like this format a bit more, where I just talk to the camera instead of all the research. I mean, I do like doing the research for, like, Arcanists and stuff. That's interesting as well. It's also very difficult. I'm not good at research. But just being able to talk to the camera and say the things that come to mind is a lot more fun. Speaking of research, I am actually working on another Arcanist background video, analysis video. That'll probably be up in a couple days, just because, I don't know, it depends on how long it takes to edit, right? And whether I find the, you know, the moxie to go about and do it. It's already recorded. I just need to put the stuff together, which it's easier said than done, right? As for, you know, a little hints on who that's gonna be.
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
Look forward to it. But otherwise, that is the end of the video. Thank you all for watching. I'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.